Okay, so today's first lesson on reporting category 2 is going to be finding the rate of change or slope. So we are going to talk about and review the different types of slope that you can have. So the first thing you want to think is, what would slope dude say? And you want to think about slope dude's journey. So remember, on the first part, he was puff, puff, positive. So any lines that lean or are slanted in that upward direction are going to be positive. And then any line that is slanted down would be like the down part of the hill on Slope Dude's journey. So he had a nice negative because it was nice to go down the hill. And then he got into the flat part of his journey. And so that is to help you remember that horizontal lines have a slope of 0 because it was no fun for him to have to ski on the flat part. And then remember, any vertical line slope is undefined. Okay, straight up and down, undefined. And you can see that here in these graphs. We have a positive slope, it's slanted up, a negative slope, it's slanted down, horizontal line, and remember that's if you end up with a 0 on the top, okay? And then a vertical line is undefined, and that's if you end up with a 0 on the bottom when you're doing the slope formula, undefined. No, it's okay on the top, but it's not okay on the bottom. And then remember your special linear equations. You've got the Hoy-Vux, and remember the graph is the first letters to help you remember the graph in a horizontal line. Okay, looks like that. The middle letter is to help you remember about the slope. And remember the slope of every horizontal line is m equals 0. So really that O in Hoy is to help you remember that the slope is 0. So we've got the graph, the slope, and then the third letter in Hoy is to help you to remember the equation, or how to write the equation of a horizontal line. And that's going to be y equals, okay? And we have the same thing for vertical lines. We have Vux, and again, the first letter V is to help you remember the direction of the graph, and that is going to be vertical, straight up and down like the y-axis. The middle letter U, again, is to help you remember the slope of a vertical line, and the slope of every vertical line is undefined, okay? And remember, they're actually going to write out the word undefined. And then the third letter is to help you remember the equation of a vertical line. And that's why there's an x, because its equation is x equals. So now we're going to actually find the rate of change, or the slope, from these examples. So just want to kind of review. First things, you're going to use your slope formula, and this will be on your math chart, except you're going to see little subscripts. You're going to see y2, y1, x2, x1. But if you just think about it as these first two x and y's have to come from the same ordered pair, the same parentheses, and the second x and y have to come in the same parentheses, and you're always subtracting. You can also find the slope when you have it in y equals format, and remember, if you find the x marks the slope, okay? And you can also have it in point slope, and your slope is going to be that number in front of the parentheses. Now remember, this y value, you are also in this format, you are given a point and a slope. So remember, this x value is the x value of the ordered pair, and the y value after the subtraction sign is the y value in the ordered pair as well. So you also get more information, and then of course this in y equals mx plus b, that is going to tell you your y-intercept. And remember, it's x is always 0, and then you have your y-intercept value here, b. Okay. So some important information you can get just by recognizing those formats. So now we're going to look here. So now this looks like this is f of 7 equals 1, f of 4 equals -1. So remember, when they give you function notation, that number inside the parentheses, that is your x value. So we really have the point 7, 1, and then 4, -1. So I'm going to go ahead and write my slope formula. So I'm going to go ahead and put the subtraction signs in, and now I'm going to identify my y value. Sorry, you want to start with your y values on top. So we are going to say 1, and then I'm going to put negative 1 after it. Okay, and so now when I put my x down here, I want to make sure that these are ordered pairs from the table. So if I start with the 1, then I have to start with the 7x value, and then 4. Okay, and so now I'm going to go to my calculator, and I'm going to actually clear the memory. And so now I'm going to say 1 minus negative 1. So I'm going to get m equals 2 over, and then I'm going to do 7 minus 4, 3. Now you could also type it in all at one time. If you wanted to as a fraction, you could put 1 minus negative 1, and then on the bottom you could do 7 minus 4, and it's going to do the subtraction and then simplify your fraction altogether, and you can see we got the same answer. And because this is a positive slope, I know that my line is going to be slanting upward in this direction if I had to match it up to a graph. Okay, next one. So now we're going to do the table. And remember, if you have a table of values, all you have to do is you just have to pick 2 x and y values from the table. M equals, go ahead and put this in here, and I'm going to put my subtraction signs in, and now I'm going to start filling in with y values. So I am actually going to pick, just randomly, I'm going to go ahead and use the first 2. Now it doesn't matter, you can use whichever ones you want. I just always pick the first 2 for ease. So I'm going to start with negative 2 as my y value, and then I'm going to plug in negative 1. Now remember, that negative on the y values is not the subtraction sign, okay? And now I'm going to plug in my x values. Well, if I use the negative 2, I have to use its ordered pair, which is negative 3, and then negative 2. Alright, and so to save time, I'm going to go ahead and type all of this in together. I'm going to say negative 2 minus negative 1. Negative 3 minus negative 2, and now I'm going to hit enter, and my slope is 1. And since it is positive, I'm going to ask myself what would slope dude say, and he would be on puff puff positive, so my line would slant upwards like this. Okay, on a graph, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have ordered pairs picked out, and you want to go ahead and do your slope formula. Now, I have a clue about how my slope's going to end up. It is telling me that it's slanting down, so I know that I'm going to have a negative slope because of its downward slope. So my answer better be negative when I do this in the calculator, or I have messed something up. Okay, so I have the ordered pair. I have negative 3, 2, and then I'm going to use this ordered pair down here. I have 3, negative 2. And you certainly could have used the origin if you wanted. That was another good point to use. So I'm going to start with here. So I need a y value. So I'm going to say 2 minus, and then I need another y value, negative 2. Now I'm going to plug in my x value. So if I started with 2, I have to use its ordered pair, which is negative 3, and then 3. Alright, so we're going to go to our calculator, and we're going to type this in. We're going to do alpha y equals enter. 2 minus negative 2, negative 3 minus 3. And my slope is a negative 2/3. Now remember, we said because we know it's a nice negative, our slope better be negative, and you can see that it is. So we did get an answer that does make sense for our problem. It didn't end up with a negative slope. Alright, so now looking at equations, if it's in the right format, you should be able to look at your equation and get your slope right off the bat. Okay, this is y equals, so I know it's in y equals mx plus b format. So my slope is, find the x marks the slope. My slope is 1/5, and I now know that my line is a puff puff positive line and is going to slant upward. Okay, for this one, it's not in either of these formats. It's not in slope intercept or point slope, so what I'm going to need to do is rearrange this. So I'm going to move the x to the other side. I'm going to have to subtract x from both sides, so I'm going to be left with negative 5y equals 15 minus x. And so now I'm going to have to divide off by negative 5, because remember, I want 1y equals. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 5. And I'm going to get y equals, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my math in my calculator. I'm going to do 15 divided by negative 5. That is negative 3. And then I have a negative 1 divided by a negative 5. And that's going to be positive plus 1/5 x. Okay, so now it's in y equals. Now I can find x. X marks the slope. My slope is 1/5, and I know that m equals 1/5. I know that my line is going to slant up like a puff positive line. All right, so looking at the last one, I have the sum of y and 2 is equal to 1/5 times the difference of x and 5. So this is point slope when you see something like this. So I know that my slope is going to be right here in front of the parentheses. And so my slope, again, is 1/5. And because it is a positive slope, I know that it is going to slant upward like puff positive. Okay, so for verbal, what you're looking for is you're looking for keywords. You're looking for the word rate. You're looking for maybe 2 units of measurement that you can put into a slope if you figure out which one's y and which one's x. And usually they're going to be using time, so you know which number is going to be your x. So let's read this. A mountain climber starts his descent from a mountain at an altitude of 12,000 meters. The climber can descend the mountain at an average speed of 170 miles per hour. Okay, I see a word that is telling me rate. That is speed. Speed is another word for slope. So I just need to know, do I know his exact speed? And I sure do. His speed is 170 miles per hour. So I'm going to put mph. Okay, one thing I need to ask myself now is his slope positive or negative? Okay, if he is descending down the mountain, it said twice here that he's descending or having his descent, so that's going down. And then if you think back to what would slope dude say, when you are on the nice negative part of the journey, your slope has to be negative.